Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Sports Report, the archived editions. I am Dave Rusch in Niagara Falls, along with John Poulter in Toronto. John, welcome to the show today.
Thank you very much, Dave. Always fun to chat with you on the Sports Archives.
Today, we're going to cover the 2001 World Series between the Arizona Diamondbacks and the New York Yankees. This occurred right after 9/11 in October of 2001. And the Arizona Diamondbacks won this. They outscored the Yankees 37-14 in the series, but it all came down to Game 7, bottom of the ninth. This was voted by MajorLeagueBaseball.com as the number 4 best World Series of all time. And this is one of the best ones of the wild card era. And we have to talk about the fact that the Diamondbacks got to the championship in 4 years. That's the fastest expansion to championship run in Major League Baseball history. Now, in basketball, the Bucks did it in a few years. They are the tops. They did it in 3 years. Well, the Diamondbacks did this in 4 years. And this was Jerry Colangelo as the GM. They brought in Randy Johnson, Curt Schilling. They had other good players there, Luis Gonzalez, Craig Counsell, a good roster. And tell us about the Yankees at the time, John.
Well, the Yankees were a very powerful team. They had won the previous 3 World Series, so obviously they were into their 4th straight World Series, 4th straight American League pennant. Very powerful team, very well managed by Joe Torre, who had previous stints managing elsewhere, but really seemed to hit the championship mode with the Yankees. He was kind of the final piece in terms of settling that team down. Obviously, a lot of sympathy with New York teams because of the 9/11 tragedy just a few weeks before. So it was a very interesting World Series. And I think notwithstanding the fact that Arizona was a new team, I think a lot of people were sympathizing with New York, and perhaps those that weren't native Arizonans or followers of the Diamondbacks probably deep down were siding with the Yankees because of the tragedy.
Yes, I agree with that. You vacationed down in Arizona in March, April, many of those years. And I lived down there at the time, so I was able to cover all 4 Phoenix games of this World Series. It was really spectacular and a lot of fun. But let's look at each game and what happened here. Game 1, the Diamondbacks blow them out, 9-1. First World Series game played in the state of Arizona. The Diamondbacks win Game 2, 4-0. So you had Curt Schilling winning Game 1. Randy Johnson was the winner of Game 2, but it wasn't until Matt Williams blasted a 3-run homer in the 7th that Johnson had a little breathing room, and the Diamondbacks won 4-0. Now the series shifted to New York, and this was where the Yankees got their first win. The D-backs scored twice in the top of the 8th with a 3-1 lead. Remember Byung-Hyun Kim, John, the pitcher, the reliever? What do you remember of him?
I remember he was a name that we had never heard of, and all of a sudden became the Diamondbacks closer and did a pretty good job. He wasn't one of the big names that we usually see come into the closing spot in the World Series. I thought he handled himself very well, quite frankly. He didn't need him in the first 2 games, as you pointed out. They were both very lopsided scores. But once they got to the closer games, he was used, and he'd been successful all season. So he wasn't untried from that standpoint, but certainly not, with all due respect, certainly not something we would call a household name.
Well, he came in as the reliever, and in the 10th inning, as the clock edged past midnight, flipping the calendar to November, Derek Jeter hit a solo shot to right field, winning the game for the Yankees. They tied the series at 2-2. Then Game 5, this was in Arizona, and the Diamondbacks won this game. Excuse me, the Yankees won this game. I take this back. That game was also in New York. The Yankees won the game 3-2 in 12 innings. And again, they got past Kim and won the game. Game 6, the Diamondbacks take. And this was a Randy Johnson game that he won there. So we moved to a Game 7. And you said you remember what happened in this game, especially at the end. But you tell me what you know, and then we'll talk about what I know here.
Well, it was an interesting World Series because, as we now know, all 7 games were won by the home team. You pointed out earlier the discrepancy in the number of runs each team scored over that 7-game World Series, and you'd think in a 4-3 World Series, you'd think that the scoring was fairly easy, fairly close, but it wasn't. Because in 2 of the games at Arizona, or 3 of the games that Arizona won, 9-1, 4-0, and 15-2. They had quite a bit of breathing room. So we got to game 7, which, I guess the script was well written. 2001 because of 9/11, the big Yankees, the new Diamondbacks. I don't think anybody suspected that this series would go as far as 7 games. So the mere fact that it got to 7 games, I think, was probably a big factor here. But the 7th game was interesting from a couple of standpoints. It was really the only tight game that Arizona ended up winning. It was one of, I believe, 3 or 4 games in that series that was actually won in the last at bat, or certainly in the last inning. But to me, what it is most famous for is it's probably the one time that I can remember Mariano Rivera coming into a ball game with a lead and a game, or a postseason game, as Major League Baseball likes to refer to them, and not holding that lead. He came in, I believe, in the 8th inning with an opportunity for a 2-inning save, which was a little bit unusual, but he was a pretty good pitcher in terms of being able to go more than 1 inning. I recall he struck out 3 guys, 1, 2, 3 in the 8th inning. Then in the 9th inning, he became very un-Rivera-like. I believe one of the runs was actually as a result of an error. I can't remember who it was that led off the inning, but somebody led off the bottom of the 9th for the Diamondbacks, got to first base. They tried to sacrifice him over. Rivera went to play the bunt, tried to get the out at second base, and I believe threw it into center field. And all of a sudden, the game was on again. And that actually cost them. And, it's not very often that you sit down and see Mariano Rivera failing to close a ball game out. But he did this time, and he did it on the world's biggest stage as well. So those are the things that kind of stick in my mind.